Hey there, you're listening to Rock Made of Metal on Cali Radio, and right now I am with probably one of my favourite bands right now at this moment. Released a second album, I'm really happy about that. How about you introduce yourself, man, and what band I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm Mark Holcomb. I play guitar in Periphery.
The new album, it's kind of ironic actually, you know, like it took like, if you could explain, like you got some new band members in and now you're just playing with them live, you could kind of explain a wee bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the most current version of our lineup. You know, obviously with Matt being gone, it's a little bit different. But yeah, we got a good, I guess, kind of new lineup. It doesn't really feel like a new lineup because we've been playing with this lineup for about a year now. But yeah, we're feeling really good about the pieces we have in place, you know, and I think we got one that's going to stick, you know, and that's always been it's kind of been a stereotype, so somewhat inaccurate stereotype of the band. I think a lot of people look at some of the members in this band, or look at this band in general, as somewhat a revolving door of members, but I don't really see that as being true. I mean, ever since the first release of the band, really, only 2 members have left, you know, and me and our bassist Nolly were the guys to replace those 2 guys. So I mean, it really hasn't been as bad as some people perceive it to be, you know.
Well, the main crutch is still there, and with the bands, I mean, you still have Spencer and you still have Miso as well too, if I'm right in saying. So it's not exactly like the band's gone any further away from their sound, or by any chance. Of course, it's still there, if you get me, you know.
Right. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that you know, the band lost their previous guitar player Alex. They lost Tom, the previous bass player. Both of those guys didn't really contribute much creatively to the process, and I think when you have 2 members leave who weren't part of the sort of creative voice, like the writing voice, it doesn't really have too much of an effect on the output of the music, you know. And you know, me and Nolly were added, and we sort of do carry some of that load. So I think the voice of the band has changed, but I don't think anything was subtracted. You know what I mean? The sound did change, the sound did evolve, but I don't think the band was gutted or anything like that, you know? It's just, not in my opinion, that's not true.
Fair enough. Sound's still there and all things going on with that, but I guess that kind of raises a question then. I mean, for the band's kind of perspective then, as a whole, and not just the sound, I mean, are you happy that the kind of almost business kind of acumen's kind of lost a wee bit from the band then, if they kind of had the more business side, or have they not even lost any acumen in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they have lost any, you know. It's just, this is how it is, you know. You got to accept it.
Okay, sweet, no problem. And we'll kind of talk about the creative side of it then. I mean, so how was the creative side of making the latest album as well too?
Well, it was very different than how I hear the first album was, because from the very beginning, we wanted to have more voices involved in the album. You know, the first album was mainly a collection of songs that Misha had written years ago, and we sat down to sort of assemble the track listing for the album before we wrote it, because we did have some reworked demos that we used for the album, like we recorded and we fleshed out, and we wrote a little bit more, we added on to some pre-existing ideas, but we wanted to sit down and write a bunch of stuff together. So me and Misha and Jake would sit down together and just sort of bounce ideas off of each other, you know, do it sort of the old school way, as opposed to having it just be one guy's voice, you know, and then have a band around it. We wanted to sort of get together in a room and have our ideas accentuate the other ideas of another person, or, you know, complementary. You know, it's all about complementing each other's voices. Yeah.
Like, as you said, kind of the old school way of doing the process of making songs anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, once we wrote the album, we had the album demoed completely from song 1 to song. I mean, the songs are, you know, 14, 13. I don't even know at this point. But we had all the songs demoed basically, and then we went and recorded everything. Had real drums, real acoustic drums in the studio, had real guitar amps, everything, as opposed to you know, the first album being recorded mainly in Misha's bedroom. You know, it was very, very low budget, lo-fi way of going about things, and this time we went all out, you know.
Exactly. And I'll jump to this question, I'll go back to something in a sec, but the fact that the last album was created mainly in a bedroom, as you kind of said yourself there, and it got the band like a support slot for Dream Theater, it got you headlining, you know, the Pepsi Max stage on Download, you know. That was with an album that was made in the bedroom. I mean, what do you expect from this album?
Well, that's a good point. It was something that caught all of us by surprise, you know, because nobody really expects that to happen. We're very thankful that, you know, an album that we put out 2 years ago or something like that, you know, got us all those things. You know, it's kind of rare, and It turned our heads for sure. But with the second album, I don't really know, because the way the first album was, it's just like we didn't have any expectations of how it was going to be perceived, and people liked it, and it got us some things that we felt like we weren't, deserving of, you know what I mean? Like, the whole Dream Theater thing was a dream come true. Like you said, Download, that was amazing. But I think the less expectations you have going into something like this, I think the better. Just sort of like write your album, support the hell out of it, go out on the road, tour as much as you can, and just let the business work itself. Just leave your expectations at the door, and just do your job. Just go out there and just support the album that you spent all your time making.
Absolutely. And this is kind of more of a fan question. You were performing at Dream Theater and you had to perform for people sitting down. How was that?
That was a little weird. The first time we'd ever done that was with Dream Theater 2 times in the States. We played Philadelphia and we played New York with them in the States. And then, because in our minds we were like, all right, we're going to have to get used to a whole tour of this stuff, because, Dream Theater play to sit-down audiences. But I can tell you, man, it's very... It's very, very different in terms of the energy level and of your concentration as well, because a big thing in our music is feeding off the crowd, and when you're feeding off an audience who's sitting down, it's not quite the same, so you kind of have to play it a little bit differently. You can't be running around the stage and getting all, sweaty and crazy with the crowd, because they're sitting there, just looking at you, So it was a very difficult thing to get used to at first, at least for me. But in the end, it made me and it made us, I think, better musicians. It got us accustomed to playing in different environments. And that's I think as touring musicians, that's one of the most important things, just making sure you can perform in different environments and be comfortable.
Well, you guys certainly did that. I mean, like, I was at the gig there, and I mean, you could notice it with you guys as well too. There was more of you guys were kind of just walking about the stage a wee bit more, if you get me. But that wasn't a bad thing, considering that people were kind of sitting down. It wasn't necessarily the environment, as you said, to be running around the place anyway. So as Spencer put it, I was sitting as very straight in my seat as possible. Actually, so it's funny. But anyway, kind of going back to the album as well too. Then, the album itself is. I had a listen to a couple of tracks, and it's definitely got a lot more dynamicness in it. Yeah. Like, how did that kind of... When you listened back to it, did you kind of notice that yourself? And if so, was that kind of the plan for the album?
Well, I mean, I think it was a direct result of having more voices on the album, and that was very intentional. It wasn't intentional to have it be more dynamic or be heavier or be anything like that. But our intention was to involve more voices in the band, sort of make it more of a democracy and make it more... even across the board in terms of creative contribution. So I think that is a direct result. Riffs that you're like, oh damn, that's Misha, or you hear a lot of riffs and parts that you're like, oh, that's Jake Bowen. You hear a lot of Thrasher stuff that's, kind of sounds like me. And Spencer wrote all of his own vocal parts this time, and he produced his own vocals. And I think that was a huge, huge addition to the album, was Spencer being able to just run freely, creatively. And he put his stamp on it. Vocally, it's as varied as you can get. There's a ton of different techniques and things that he's using on the album.
Well, more speaking, I guess, on Spencer's part on that, then, I mean, has he ever talked to you about that kind of freedom that he has then on the stage, and if so, what's he said?
Well, he is a producer, so that changes his approach tremendously. He's not one of those guys who shows up in a studio and just screams. He loves to challenge himself, and I think from day one, when I remember, I knew I was good friends with him when he joined the band years ago, and he wasn't near the vocalist he is now. He had to work, he had to practice. It took lots of hard work and attention to detail, and I think that attention to detail is what makes him a great producer, and why he's so good at producing himself. And I know that's his approach, is just to sit down and take as much time as you can on your vocals. And he's also improved so much as a live performer too. I mean, like, that's the thing. He writes these insane vocal lines, but at the same time, he never writes anything he can't pull off live. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I haven't seen anybody who can change the voice so quickly as Spencer. He was on stage 1 minute, he was singing 1 minute, he was screaming 1 minute, he was growling. It was amazing to watch that. Yeah. But also, I think that kind of more or less kind of rounds up the questions, although I'm kind of avoiding the elephant in the room. And I hope at this point, by the way, like, I have gained that I'm actually quite a fan of you guys. I do like the band, right? However, Periphery 2, this time it's personal. Really?
Well, I know. A lot of people when they heard that, they were like, "Oh, come on, really? That's got to be a joke. They got to be pranking us or something like that." But actually, we were just sitting around one day. We were talking about potential album titles, and we were spitting out all this stuff, like really serious ones and really funny, like joke ones. Like calling it Periphery 3 or something like that. You know what I mean? When it's only a second album. I think it was me who actually said Periphery 2. This time it's personal. Just sort of making sort of alluding to like a cheesy 80s movie. I think it actually came from Jaws 2. That was the actual first movie that had that on the billboard. But it's sort of somewhat of a humorous nod to that. We thought it was funny. It's pretty stupid, but that's sort of what we're all about. It's just like to have fun. And
you see, I thought it was like from Terminator.
I wouldn't be surprised if it came from numerous movies. I know. I think I read on Wikipedia that it came from Jaws 2, but I remember it being used in a couple other things. You always hear blah 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 too. This time it's personal. I always said in some really cheesy voice.
It's a good title for an album. It makes people laugh. So yeah.
Exactly. And the content hopefully will speak for itself. People can look past a stupid name. Yeah,
I know. More than likely, anyway. I mean, well, I'm going to kind of wrap up the interview there, anyway, man. But one of the things I always love kind of bands to do is just like a message for the fan kind of idea, anyway. So, message for the fans.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for coming out and seeing us live. Thank you for buying the album. Thank you for listening. Thanks for all your support. And to any fans who came to see us on our UK/Europe tour, we're very sorry about Matt's injury. As I'm sure you know, we're playing a shorter set because Mike did not have time to learn the full set. He was notified a day in advance, so we apologize for playing an abbreviated set, but we'll get back on track. We'll let Matt's shoulder get back into its socket and get back to business. So thank you guys so much.